Hi there, my name is Jeff Goshi, and I am the owner of Fabino Baking, a small specialty baking business located in Northern California. I'm here today. We're going to be making sugar cookies together, specifically sugar cookies that will be rolled out and cut into creative shapes and decorated in some subsequent videos that I'll be producing. The recipe I'm using today is really simple, very basic sugar cookie, vanilla sugar cookie recipe. You can use that. The instructions are in the notes for this show, or if you've got a favorite family recipe for cutout cookies, that's terrific. I'm sure you can use that. Basic process for making the cookies is going to be the same. There are a couple of tips at the end of this video that you might be able to apply to getting your cookies ready to put them in the refrigerator for chilling. So still some value to the video if you want to stick around and watch. The recipe I use today is, again, it's very simple. It's essentially flour, sugar, butter, eggs, baking powder, and salt. Very straightforward. You can add additional seasons, spices if you want to. I keep mine simple. It's what my customers like, so why would I argue with that, or why would I try and change that? You can find all kinds of recipes online as well. You can, different flavors. The one thing I do encourage you to do is if you are going to go online and find a recipe, or if you're looking through cookbooks, try and find one that explicitly says that the cookie holds its shape well during baking. Because I've had, growing up, this dough, it looks beautiful. Roll it out. The cookies look terrific when they're going into the oven, but when they come out of the oven, they've sort of become misshapen. They kind of puff up and too much something, and they just don't hold their shape. So you don't really get the shape of the cookie that you had intended. They still taste delicious. Don't throw them away. But if you want to make sure that the cookie holds its shape, find one that explicitly says that it's going to hold its shape. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started on this. Very simple. I've got a couple views on the camera here, so you'll see me shifting things. I'm interacting with my computer, but you'll see the view change based on what we're doing. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our dry ingredients, our flour, our baking powder, and our salt combined. And I like to sift my ingredients. You don't have to sift it. It's just something that I've become accustomed to, so we're going to be doing that today. When I measure out flour, I always use digital scale. Just make sure that I've always got the same amount of flour, and every time I make the cookies is going to be exactly the same. If you're just scooping with a measuring cup, you might have a heavy scoop sometimes, you might have a light scoop sometimes, so you may have a little bit more or less. Using the scale just eliminates that risk. If you don't have a scale or you don't want to use it, that's fine. It's not going to make or break anything. It's just, as a business owner, I need to make sure my product was the same every single time. So that's why I went to using a scale. I've got a bowl here that will hold the ingredients after they've been sifted. And of course, I've got my sifter. So I'm going to change my view here so you can see what I'm doing. So I've got the digital scale, I've got the bowl, and I've got the sifter. We'll just set those on here. And you want to make sure that if you are using the scale, that you zero out so that you're sort of eliminating the weight of these, the bowl and the sifter. You want to just know what the weight of the ingredients are. Okay? So now we're going to put our flour in the sifter. Just measure it through here. And let's see. Okay, got my flour in there. Next, I'm going to be putting in my baking powder and my salt. Now, with both of those, I still have the bowl on the scale, but I rely on the measuring spoons for those ingredients because they're so lightweight. It's hard for that scale, the digital scale, to sort of pick up such a small amount of something. So I do still use my measuring spoons for these smaller ingredients. Got the baking powder and the salt. Okay, once we've got those in there, we're going to go ahead and sift the ingredients. Just make sure that you don't have any sort of lumps. Sometimes flour, if it's set in its container for a while, it might have some soft lumps in it. They're not hard, but you do want to get them broken up. You don't want to have little powder, little flour balls in your cookies, whether it's to, you don't want to eat them, you don't want to encounter them when you're cutting out the cookies or baking them, and you definitely don't want it when you eat them. So make sure that you sift out any of those small things. So you got your flour here, it's all really nice and sifted and light, got a little bit of air worked in there. Next, we're going to be mixing our egg and vanilla. So I've got the egg already broken, my vanilla portioned out. So we'll take those and just use a small whisk to mix those up. Okay. Make sure you keep your work surface clean. And next we're going to move over to the mixer. I've got my butter. I'm going to portion that into the mixing bowl. You want to make sure that all of your ingredients are at room temperature. You don't want cold eggs, cold butter. The butter would be a particular issue because it's not going to mix well with the sugar if it's cold. So make sure it's at room temperature. So we put the two ingredients together, and we're going to be using our paddle on the stand mixer. Now, you don't have to use a stand mixer if you don't have one. You can use a hand mixer. The dough does get pretty stiff, so it's best if you have some sort of a electronic device to mix it up. You can mix it by hand. It's just the dough gets kind of tough, so and kind of thick. So this eliminates some of the muscle that you have to put into it. So we're just going to turn on the mixer now. Turn it up a little bit so that it's combining the sugar and the flour really nicely. And keep going, maybe take it up to about 6 or 7. You don't have to go super high at this point. The ingredients are mixing, there's a little bit of loose sugar in the bottom. So I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to give it a little bit of a scrape around the edges just to make sure that we get all those ingredients really, really, really nicely combined. Okay. Now we'll just turn it on here for another 15, 20 seconds and let it get good and mixed. Okay, next we're going to put our egg and vanilla in. And turn the mixer on again. Make it slow at first. You want to make sure that the ingredients start to mix together. You don't want things flying out. Most important when you start adding the flour, but also just a good practice to get in. Start low and then work your way up. Okay, it's looking pretty good. But again, I'm going to scrape down the edges so that make sure and get all of the ingredients really well mixed in there. Okay. Turn it on for another 15 seconds. I'm going up to about 5 on the mixer. Again, it doesn't have to be at the super high speed, but you want it to be high enough that it's doing a good job of mixing. Okay, that's looking really good. Next, we're going to put in the flour. Now, you don't want to dump the flour in. It'll make a mess. But also, if you dump it in and you turn on your mixer, potentially it's going to go everywhere. So I just take one of my measuring spoons and portion it into about thirds. That way, it's just sort of, you're not putting a ton of flour in at a time. And then turn the mixer on low again. Start out really low so you don't get a big cloud of flour going everywhere. And then as it starts to combine, just turn the mixer up a little bit higher. Okay. That's looking pretty good. We'll take the next third of the flour mixture and add it in. Start out low. Going to increase the speed. When you're done, you're going to see that it's a pretty dry dough, which is good because you want it to be a good stiff dough for rolling out the cookies. All right, we'll go ahead and put in the remainder of our flour. And again, turn on low and let it start to mix in. If you're going to be making a lot of cookies, this is a great dough, easy to double, triple, as long as you have the mixer space available to have all the ingredients in there. You can kind of see in this one, there's quite a bit of space, so I usually double the recipe. This one's a single recipe, but I never hesitate to double it. Okay, so I'm going to let it go. It's mixing all of those little bits and pieces in the bottom of the bowl, and it's just making it into a nice ball of dough. Once there are no more little pieces in the bottom, we'll stop the mixer. And come back over to this other view for us. And you can see the dough, it's made a nice ball. So clear off your paddle. And then I use a plastic scraper and just kind of scrape it into one nice ball. Okay, so got that. We're going to set that aside for a second. We're going to talk a little bit about rolling out the cookies. Most recipes that I've seen, certainly in old cookbooks, say that you should, as soon as the dough is made, turn it out onto plastic wrap it, make it into a ball, put it in the refrigerator, and chill it till it's chilled all the way through. That worked great, but the thing is, when you have a big cold blob of dough and you pull it out to roll it out, it's really tough to roll. And when you do roll it, you get these big cracks in the dough, and it's just kind of frustrating. It also takes a lot more effort. So what I learned to do a few years ago is to roll the dough out as soon as it comes out of the mixer, put it in the refrigerator, and then it's chilling at the thickness that I want it to be when I am ready to start cutting and baking the cookies. So we're going to do, to make sure that we've got that, we're going to start with the rolling pin. You want to make sure your rolling pin is uniform in thickness. There you see the rolling pins that sort of taper on the ends. That's going to make it really difficult to roll a nice uniform thickness of cookie dough if your rolling pin tapers. So definitely want to have a rolling pin that is uniform. Next, I've got these things called pin bands. These are available, Joann's, Michael's, Williams-Sonoma, Sur La Table, other places online. But you get a set of 8 of them, 2 of each color. You got a super thin one that's about 1/8 of an inch thickness. You've got a yellow one that's about, this is about 1/16 of an inch. This is about 1/8 of an inch. The green one is about 1/4 of an inch, and the blue one is about 3/8 of an inch. For what we're doing today, we're going to be using the green ones, which is the one that's about 1/4 of an inch. And you're just going to roll those onto the ends of your rolling pin. So as long as you're using the same colors on either end, and they're 1/4, in this case, they're 1/4 inch, anything that gets rolled underneath it is going to be 1/4 inch. You're going to get a really nice uniform cookie dough by using these pin bands. Okay, set that aside for a second. Next sort of little trick I've got is using wax paper to roll out the cookie dough. I'll take 2 sheets of wax paper, put the dough in between, and then use the rolling pin to roll it out. That way you're not adding additional flour, like again, traditionally you flour your work surface and then you roll out your dough. If you're rolling between the wax paper is slick enough that the cookie dough is sort of spreading and leveling out within the 2 sheets, and you're not adding any additional flour. So it's just sort of a nice way to go. And then when you bake them, you don't have that extra flour that you have to contend with either. So I've got 2 sheets here. They're about 18 inches long, so I'm going to lay them out. And then I'm going to take the dough and I'm going to cut it in half. And put about half that dough just in the middle of the sheet of wax paper on the bottom. And I just kind of like shape it a little bit so that it's sort of nicely positioned in the middle of the wax paper. Now we're going to take our wax paper and just lay it over the top of the cookie dough. And then take our rolling pin. And you may have to sort of go slowly at first. If you're on a slick surface like my countertop here, I'm going to have to hold the wax paper at either end, but I can eventually I can get to the point where it's rolling out pretty smoothly. So once you've got the length, you can turn it sideways and continue rolling it out. You can see the dough is just really nicely spreading between those two pieces of wax paper. And then maybe lift up. Do the same thing on the other side. And while it's not a perfect triangle, it is sort of within the shape of the wax paper, and it's going to make it easy now to put this in the refrigerator and chill it. And then when you're ready to cut out your cookies, you just pull out a sheet. You can pull out one sheet, you can pull out multiple sheets, and cut your dough. Cut your cookies and then bake your cookies. The other nice thing about the wax paper, after you've cut your dough, a lot of times you have like all these scraps of the area of the cookie dough that wasn't used in the cookie cutter. So you can take all those scraps, put them into a ball, put them between the wax paper and roll it again. Again, you're not adding any additional flour, so you've got a nice pure cookie. It's not going to be, if the texture of the original cookie is going to be the same as the texture of the cookies that you've rolled subsequently because you're not adding any additional flour. Okay, so I'm going to do that with both of those. And then I've got the baking sheet that I'm going to be baking the cookies on, but in this case I'm using the baking sheet as a storage. So once I've got the cookie dough rolled out, I can just slide it into the pan, and then this particular pan comes with a plastic snap-on lid. You can take probably up to 6 to 8 sheets of cookie dough in between the wax paper and layer them in here so that once you've got them all done, you can put the lid on, slide it in the refrigerator, and it takes up very little space. And they get nice and chilled. They're chilling at the thickness that you want them to be so that when we are ready to start cutting the cookies again, they're ready to go. And the cookie dough is going to stay good for a good 5 days. So it's not like you have to do all of your cookies all at once. You could do a sheet at a time and just not feel that pressure of having to do all of your cutout cookies at once. So just a nice little tip. This has helped me over the years to just sort of like be a little bit more at ease and have a little bit more control over the whole cookie baking and decorating process. All right, that's it for this video. The next one will be all about cutting and baking the cookies, and then from there we're going to be decorating.